She was a journalist hunting for the truth. He, a billionaire accused of a billion-dollar crime. They struck a deal to fake a relationship, but the passion became real and dangerous. Now, tied up in an abandoned warehouse with a knife to her throat, she faces the true villain. Will the man she deceived and learned to love arrive in time to save her? Or will the truth she so desperately sought be the cause of her death? This is a story where every lie reveals a devastating truth. The sound of silver cutlery against fine china was almost as deafening as the buzz of forced conversations that filled the ballroom of the plaza in New York. Crystal chandeliers cast a cold, fragmented light on silk-covered shoulders and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Elena Parker felt the weight of every one of those gazes. Her navy blue dress, the most expensive item in her wardrobe, felt like a cheap costume amidst so much opulence. She clutched her champagne flute with damp fingers, the cold sweat on the back of her neck a constant reminder that she didn't belong there. Her mission wasn't to celebrate, but to hunt, and her prey was somewhere in that ballroom. Her editor, Mark, had been brutally clear that morning. "Parker, you have 1 month. Either you bring me concrete proof linking Blackwood Enterprises to the money laundering scheme, or you can start looking for a job in the classifieds." The words still echoed in her mind, a war drum marking the rhythm of her desperation. Blackwood Enterprises was an impenetrable fortress, and its CEO, Peter Blackwood, a ghost. No one ever got close to him, except today. The bride was her best friend from college, and the groom, a distant cousin of Blackwood. It was her only chance, a crack in the armor. She watched her friend, radiant under the photographer's flashes, and felt a pang of guilt. She was using this sacred moment as a professional ambush. Alone? A woman's voice at the next table dripped with a velvety disdain. Elena just nodded, a curt gesture. The scrutiny continued, relentless. She came alone. No boyfriend. Looks a bit lost, don't you think? The whispers were like tiny needles piercing her composure. She raised her glass to mask her discomfort, her loneliness becoming a blinding spotlight. Hours remained before she could leave without seeming rude, hours of silent torture. Just as she was about to get up to seek refuge on the terrace, a tall, imposing shadow stopped beside her table. An impeccably cut black suit, a silver silk tie, and a face with features so sharp they seemed carved from marble. The air around him seemed to grow colder, thinner. He sat down with a decisive movement, as if that chair had always belonged to him. Elena blinked, caught off guard as the man leaned in, his voice a deep magnetic whisper brushing against her ear. "Pretend you're with me." Elena's heart leaped so violently she nearly dropped her glass. It was him, Peter Blackwood, the ghost, the target. Her mind spun, a mixture of panic and fascination. "Excuse me?" she whispered back, her body stiffening. He didn't look at her, his piercing gray eyes fixed on a group of guests a few tables away. "They're gossiping. If you don't mind, let's pretend we came together." The proposal was so absurd that a nervous laugh escaped Elena's lips. "And why would I play the part of a complete stranger's girlfriend?" Finally, he turned. His gaze was so intense she felt as if he could see through her clothes, her skin, straight into her soul and her secret intentions. He leaned in a little closer, enough for her to catch the refined scent of sandalwood and leather that emanated from him. "Just pretend. Believe me, you'll avoid these unpleasant stares and I'll escape an arranged business introduction. We both win." Elena bit her lip, her journalist's mind working at high speed. The opportunity was surreal, a gift wrapped in danger. The stares on her had already shifted from judgment to a hungry curiosity. "All right." A defiant smile curved her lips. "But how far do you plan to take this charade?" An almost imperceptible arch appeared in his eyebrow, the corner of his mouth rising minimally. "Leave that to me." Then he casually draped his arm over the back of her chair, a gesture so naturally intimate it made the nearby women cover their mouths and whisper. A silent alarm went off in her head. Danger. This man is too good at this. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice low, though she already knew the answer. "Peter Blackwood." The reply was short, the name carrying the weight of an empire. Did he know her? Was he testing her? Before she could process it, he poured more wine into her glass, every movement that of a courteous gentleman. "Relax, Elena Parker." He said her full name, and her heart skipped a beat. "He knows who I am." "You know me?" she asked, her voice a thread. Peter shrugged. I have a good memory for noteworthy faces. His gaze locked onto hers, so sharp that Elena had to look away, her pulse racing with something she couldn't tell if it was fear, excitement, or both. The silent contract was sealed. She was no longer just a journalist chasing a story. She was an actress on the enemy's stage, and the script had just begun, with her having no idea what the final act would be. If this story has touched you so far, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Elena thought the little theatrical play would end with the wedding fireworks. The next morning, she would be back in her real world. The smell of reheated coffee, the glow of her laptop screen, and piles of headache-inducing financial reports. Life, however, rarely followed her script. 3 days later, the instant she stepped out of the newsroom, feeling the cold night air on her tired face, a sleek black Bentley pulled up silently to the curb. The tinted window rolled down, revealing the familiar cold face of Peter Blackwood. Elena froze, her heart punching her ribs. "Don't tell me you've come to buy a newspaper," she managed to say, her voice tinged with a sarcasm that barely hid her shock. Peter glanced at his wristwatch, a masterpiece of Swiss engineering that was probably worth more than her apartment. "If you're not busy, I need 5 minutes." His tone was that of a man accustomed to his time being valued in millions per second. "Sounds like a political interview," she retorted. But still, she opened the car door and slid inside. The interior of cream leather and polished wood made her worn-out shoes look violently out of place. He wasted no time. "Remember what I said at the wedding?" Elena gave a small smile. "Hard to forget, especially the part where I almost got a cramp in my jaw from fake smiling at all those ladies." A trace of amusement curved his lips. "Here's the thing. The media and the shareholders are putting on pressure. They think I'm abnormal for not having a girlfriend or a family. My stocks don't rise or fall based on my private life, but the rumors are irritating." Elena crossed her arms, her brain already connecting the dots. "So, you want me to keep pretending?" "Exactly." He faced her directly, and the intensity of those gray eyes made the air in the car thicker. "I need someone smart, strong enough not to become a laughingstock for the press." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her face. "And I thought you played the part exceptionally well." Elena burst into a genuine laugh. What a strange compliment. Instead of "you're beautiful," it's "you're a great actress." "Both are true," he replied, with a disarming calmness that silenced her instantly. The air grew tense. She knew she should refuse. It was dangerous, unethical, and she didn't have time to be a billionaire's social alibi. But then, a thought struck her like lightning. If she agreed, she would gain unrestricted access to the upper echelons of society, right into the circle of figures linked to the financial scandal she was investigating. This could be the door she desperately needed. Resting her chin on her hand, she feigned deliberation. "And how exactly do you plan to compensate me for this role?" "Respect, discretion, and a certain convenience," Peter answered without hesitation. "Elena Parker doesn't sell herself that cheap," she narrowed her eyes, teasing. "I want the full right to abandon the deal at any moment I find you unbearably boring." A soft laugh escaped him, a rare, warm sound like ice cracking under sunlight. "Deal. And I reserve the right to terminate the contract if you turn into a public relations disaster. The only disaster here is your suit being too perfect, making the other women look at me like I'm a leech. Then I will look at you with enough devotion to make them believe otherwise." His tone remained neutral, but there was a mischievous spark in his eyes. Elena swallowed hard. This man knew exactly how to unbalance a woman. The trial by fire came the following Saturday, at a charity gala at the Museum of Modern Art. As they got out of the car, the camera flashes exploded like a lightning storm. "Are you sure about this? These heels are new. I might trip on the red carpet," Elena murmured. "If you fall, I'll carry you inside." Peter's tone was matter-of-fact. "You realize that lines like that make it very hard for me to concentrate, right?" "Exactly. That's the plan." He extended his hand to her like a gentleman from another century. Inside, all eyes turned to them. The murmurs rose. "Peter Blackwood has a girlfriend. Who is she?" Elena took a deep breath, forcing a graceful smile. "Act, Parker. Pretend you're writing a story undercover." Peter leaned close to her ear, his warm voice brushing her skin. "Your smile is much better than at the wedding. It looks less forced. You should try it too, instead of keeping that frozen mask," she whispered back. He tilted his lips slightly, letting the smallest of smiles appear. Like this? Elena held her breath, her heart stumbling. That half-smile was more dangerous than a forged financial report. While Peter was approached by business partners, Elena seized the opportunity. She discreetly moved away, heading towards the buffet where two middle-aged men were talking in low voices. She pretended to grab a canapé, her ears sharp. The funds are flowing through a subsidiary in the Cayman Islands, BLC Holdings. The keyword triggered her journalistic instinct. She memorized the company name and the vague numbers they mentioned, her heart pounding with the adrenaline of discovery. When she returned to Peter's side, he looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "Where did you disappear to?" "Getting more dessert," she lied, holding up a plate with a tiny macaron. He studied her for a moment, as if trying to read something behind her bright eyes. Finally, he shook his head slightly. "Don't make me look for you in the crowd. A real girlfriend doesn't vanish in the middle of a party." "A fake one does," Elena smiled, though inside she was on high alert. "He's more perceptive than I thought. I need to be careful." The game was more dangerous than she had imagined, and she was starting to wonder who was really in control. Elena believed their fake relationship would be confined to lavish parties, where the touch of their hands served only to ward off curious glances. But one Saturday night, Peter proved her completely wrong. The familiar Bentley pulled up in front of her building, but the destination wasn't a ballroom. 15 minutes later, they were at an old theater downtown. The glowing marquee announced a special symphony concert, Beethoven and Rachmaninoff. Elena blinked, surprised. "You're taking me to listen to classical music?" Peter shrugged, his voice firm. "My fake girlfriend needs a touch of reality. Otherwise, the audience will notice the script." She laughed softly, following him inside. The theater gleamed in golden hues, the high ceiling painted with murals and rows of red velvet seats stretching beneath the chandeliers. As the lights dimmed and the first notes of the orchestra sounded, Elena sat beside Peter, their shoulders touching in the narrow space. She felt a pang of strangeness, an intimacy that wasn't part of the contract. In the dim light, she stole a glance at him. Peter was sitting upright, his usually severe face softened, his gaze distant, as if fixed on something beyond the present. In the pause between movements, he spoke, his deep voice blending with the resonance of the cello. "When I was little, my mother used to play pieces like these at night." Elena turned her head. It was the first time he had mentioned his family. "She died when I was 10, he continued, still looking at the stage. "My father was different. For him, silence mattered more than music. He believed a Blackwood son had to be strong, flawless, no mistakes allowed." Elena held her breath, feeling a weight in his words that had never been revealed before. "Flawless. That sounds suffocating," she whispered. He turned to her, his gray eyes shining in the soft light. "It was, but without perfection, I would never be where I am today. My father left me no other choice." Elena swallowed, resisting the urge to reach out and touch him. Instead, she offered a gentle smile. Maybe he forgot that sometimes imperfection is what makes someone truly unforgettable. A moment of silence passed. Then Peter's lips curved slightly. Maybe. At that moment, under the melancholic melody of Rachmaninoff, Elena realized that beneath the icy facade, Peter was also a man with hidden corners and longings. That sudden glimpse of vulnerability made her heart stir in an unusual and dangerous way. Back in her small apartment, the contrast was stark. The scent of his sandalwood still lingered on her clothes as she sat before the cold screen of her laptop. With the name of the subsidiary, BLC Holdings, she spent the night diving into financial databases. And then, she found it. Amidst a tangled web of numbers and transactions, one document stood out. A fund transfer report, channeled from anonymous offshore accounts to BLC Holdings. Money laundering. Elena gripped her pen tightly, her pulse racing. It was her first truly valuable clue. But what made her stomach freeze was the scanned image at the end of the document. The signature of the final approver. A bold, precise signature she was beginning to know all too well. Peter Blackwood. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling heavily. God, I'm pretending to be the girlfriend of this company's CEO. Her rational side urged her. This is your chance to expose the scandal. But her heart, still warmed by the confession at the theater, countered, what if he's not involved? What if it's a trap? The duality was tearing her apart. Was he the man who showed her the cracks in his armor, or the calculating criminal she was hunting? The night dragged on, and Elena found herself trapped between the image of the boy who lost his mother and the man whose signature could destroy an empire, and her heart along with it. The line between the journalist and the woman was blurring, and she wasn't sure which side would be left when it was all over. In the days that followed, Elena felt as if she were living in two worlds that were violently colliding within her. By day, she was a journalist, analyzing Peter's scanned signature with a magnifying glass, comparing it to other documents, her stomach churning with every match. By night, she was the fake girlfriend, forcing smiles at events while his hand rested on the small of her back, the heat seeping through the fabric of her dress and branding her skin like a mark of guilt. BLC Holdings became an obsession, a shadow that stretched over every moment they spent together. The pressure at the newsroom reached a boiling point. "Parker, what are you waiting for?" Mark growled in his office, his impatience evident on his face. "We have the signature. Other outlets are sniffing around the story. If you don't publish in 48 hours, I'm giving it to Roberts." The name hit her like a punch. Roberts was a vulture journalist, famous for destroying reputations with sadistic glee. The thought of him writing about Peter, twisting every fact, filled her with a protective dread. "No," she heard herself say, her voice firmer than she felt. "The story is mine. I'll write it." She had just signed her own sentence. That evening, Peter's invitation was different. "I want you to meet my sister." They drove to the family estate in the Hamptons, an elegant old house surrounded by rose gardens. There, she met Emily, a young woman with the same gray eyes as Peter, but with a warmth he rarely showed. The dinner was unexpectedly cozy, filled with childhood stories that made Elena laugh and see a Peter she never imagined existed. "So, you're Elena," Emily said with a knowing smile. "I've finally met the woman who made my brother forget how to scowl." Elena blushed, feeling like the biggest fraud in the world, especially when Peter, in the softest voice she had ever heard him use, said, "She's someone special." Her heart stumbled. Was it an act for his sister, or was it real? Later, as they walked through the garden under a starry sky, Elena felt she would suffocate under the weight of her secret. He stopped near a stone bench. "You seem distracted tonight." She couldn't hold it in any longer. "Peter, I need to ask you something about your company, about BLC Holdings." The name hung in the cold air between them. The atmosphere changed instantly. The softness in his face vanished, replaced by a mask of ice. "How do you know about that?" His voice was low, dangerous. "I'm a journalist, Peter. It's my job," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw some documents with your signature on them." He stared at her, the silence stretching for an eternity. When he spoke, each word was a sliver of ice. "So that's what this was. The whole time." He took a step back, the distance between them now a chasm. "The fake girlfriend. How convenient. The perfect proximity to get your big story." "No, I mean, yes at first, but what, Elena?" His voice rose, cutting. "You looked me in the eye. You met my sister. You sat at my table, all while planning to stab me in the back." "I'm torn," she burst out, tears finally streaming down her face. "I don't want to believe you're guilty, but the evidence, my job, your job." He spat the word as if it were poison. The vulnerable man who had shared stories about his mother was gone, leaving behind the ruthless CEO the world knew. "You made your choice when you decided to use me." Before she could say anything else, he turned away. "The contract is terminated. Stay away from me and my family." He walked away, his shoulders rigid, leaving her alone in the dark garden. The scent of the roses suddenly seemed cloying, funereal. The sham was over, the truth had been spoken, and the result was more devastating than any lie they had ever told. Elena knew she had lost more than just a target for her story. She had lost the man she had, against all odds and all logic, fallen in love with. And now she had to decide whether to publish the story that would destroy him or bury the truth that would consume her. In the days following the fateful night in the garden, Elena felt as if she were drowning in slow motion. Robert's article was published, titled "The Wolf of Wall Street, The Two Faces of Peter Blackwood." The piece painted him as a criminal mastermind, using BLC Holdings as his personal piggy bank. Blackwood Enterprises bled on the stock market. Peter's name was dragged through the mud, and he vanished completely from the public eye. Every headline was a knife twisting deeper into Elena's heart. She had the truth, but at what cost? Refusing to give up, she dove headfirst into the investigation, now on her own. driven by a mixture of guilt and a stubborn need to prove that the man she loved was not a monster. In the early hours of the morning, in a nearly empty cafe, her laptop pinged with the arrival of an anonymous email. No subject, no signature, just one sentence and an attached file. The real traitor is closer than you think. Be careful. The file contained internal records, scanned contracts, transfer receipts, all pointing to a single name. Richard Hale, the company's vice president, the man Peter trusted most. Peter's signature had been a masterful digital forgery. Elena felt an overwhelming sense of relief, followed by a cold fear. Peter was innocent, and she was in possession of a truth that could cost her her life. The next evening, as she left the newsroom, she felt it. The presence of a shadow following her, the heavy footsteps echoing hers. Before she could react, a black car cut her off. 2 men got out. "Mr. Hale sends his regards," one of them sneered. "Stop digging." Panic rose in Elena's throat, but before she could scream, a cloth with a strong chemical smell was pressed against her face. Darkness swallowed her. She woke up tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse, the air thick with the smell of dust and rust. Richard Hale sat in front of her, a venomous smile on his lips. "Miss Parker, you've disappointed me." He held up a knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. "Delete the files, or your next scoop will be your own obituary." "I'd rather die than let you keep staining his name," she spat, her voice trembling but defiant. Meanwhile, Peter, alerted by a witness who saw the kidnapping, was moving heaven and earth. Using his resources and contacts, he traced the car to the industrial district. When the police raided the location, Peter was the first one in. The scene paralyzed him. Richard with the knife at Elena's throat. "Stay back, Blackwood!" Richard yelled, desperate. Peter's heart stopped. In that instant, the empire, the money, the pride, nothing mattered. Only her. Seizing a split second of Richard's distraction, Peter lunged forward, pushing Elena away from the blade at the exact moment a gunshot echoed through the warehouse and the police subdued Richard. Elena collapsed, blood trickling from a cut on her arm. Peter held her, terror etched on his face, the icy mask permanently shattered. "Elena, talk to me. Don't close your eyes." She opened her eyes with difficulty, her lips pale. "Peter, do you believe me now?" His voice trembled, a sound she had never heard. "I believe you. Forgive me. Please don't leave me." At the hospital, he never left her side. Holding her hand, he whispered to the sleeping woman everything his pride had stopped him from saying, that he had loved her since the night she'd almost tripped in her heels, that the cold facade was his prison, and that she had been his only freedom. When Elena was finally discharged, Peter called a press conference. Facing a sea of cameras, he was not the cold CEO, but a transformed man. "I am innocent," he declared, his voice resonating with conviction. And the truth came to light thanks to one person, the woman who risked everything for justice. He turned, extended a hand to Elena, and pulled her to his side into the light. "She came into my life pretending," he said, looking only at her. But what we felt became the only real thing. That night, on the same riverbank where they had walked, he knelt. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. "I can't promise you perfection, Elena, but I promise you my truth, my protection, and my heart, forever. No more pretending." Elena's tears were of pure joy. "Yes," she whispered. "No more pretending." He embraced her, and under the glow of the city lights, the contract of appearances was sealed, not with a signature, but with the promise of a lifetime. If this emotional story of love and deceit touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new narratives. Comment below what city you're watching from. We'd love to know how far our stories reach. Activate the bell to be the first to know when a new video is live, and explore our other videos for more stories that will have you hooked from start to finish. Your interaction is the strength that moves us.